Welcome to A Taste of AZ podcast, where we interview everyone from James Beard award-winning chefs to local mixologists, winemakers, breweries, and so much more. We've got an awesome episode lined up for you today. But before we get into that, head to atasteofaz.com so you can subscribe to our quarterly magazine and email newsletter to find all of the best places to eat and drink around town. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Now let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Glad to be here. I think it's my fourth.
I think so. I was thinking, I was on the way here and I was like, I think Gabe might be our most frequented guest.
Yay!
Hell yeah, man. Very happy about that.
What a distinction.
Yes. You should put that on your business card.
That's
Yeah. Most frequent guest on the Taste of AZ podcast.
right.
You're like, what's that? And you're like, shh, you act like you don't know.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Gabe Gardner, welcome to I was going to say Tap.az.
Well,
that was my old podcast.
Yeah.
So
I was on that one for sure.
you weren't you?
I was. The first time I did it was during COVID.
Okay.
So it's been at least 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to A Taste of AZ.
Glad to be here.
Welcome back, man. We are at your, I'd say, is this the newest facility that you guys have?
Yeah, this is our fourth community kitchen.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah.
4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So where are we right now?
So we're at the corner of 12th Street and Jefferson, downtown in the East Lake Park neighborhood, directly adjacent to First Institutional Baptist Church, which happens to be our phenomenal partner in this particular kitchen project.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice. And I love that it's, we were talking about this a little bit ago, is there's I feel like a lot of revamp going on, really in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
This is a really great example of what's called adaptive reuse, which is to take an older building and taking that building stock and breathing some life back into it, with the idea, in our case, always as part of doing community development and reaching out and helping folks. Yeah. So you did.
Hello.
That's better.
Is it the
That's
cord?
It may be.
Okay.
Don't touch it.
Okay.
Don't even look at it.
We're good. See, guys, you guys, an inside look into the hassles of having a podcast.
It's really the sausage making.
Yeah, it
it
is.
tastes
People are like, "Oh, what kind of questions do you ask?" So they ask about podcasts. I'm like, "Dude, first of all, get a good cord."
good. Right.
Microphone.
That's right.
But no, man. This is like I said, the revitalization of some of the buildings. Like some of our favorite restaurants are buildings that were refurbished and
For sure.
redone, and
For sure.
and I love it.
Yeah.
I love that aspect.
No, I 100% agree. And this building, the history of this building is a pretty interesting one. So it was built in the 60s by a guy named Russia Fellows, who was the first African-American architect registered in the state of Arizona.
Nice.
And so he designed and built this, and it's a unique building. And I mean, you can't see, but it's 2 halves. So there's a breezeway that runs down the middle of it. And this half where we're sitting was always some sort of food venture, most recently rather, a soul food restaurant. And then on the other side of the breezeway is a really famous barbershop called the Esquire. And during its heyday, people like Reggie Jackson and Muhammad Ali got their hair cut here.
Nice.
And so there were all these famous African Americans from around the country when Eastlake was more robust and a more bustling center of economic activity. And so when this building came up for sale and it had fallen into disrepair, First Institutional Baptist Church, under the leadership of Warren Stewart, bought this building. And then we started partnering with them. I guess it's been about 2 years or so.
Okay.
It took us about a year to get this back into usable shape.
Yeah.
The dining room and the kitchen were in disarray. Would be a nice way to put it.
It'd been sitting for a while, right?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So it I mentioned before we started, that it was kind of like they had dinner service one night and they turned everything off and just kind of left.
We're out.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was some cleaning to do. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So we did some cleaning and some revamping. And then what we currently have is this space is being used by over 15 different entrepreneurs from this neighborhood and the surrounding community in order to springboard and launch their businesses.
Nice.
So we've got a West African food truck. We've got a full service caterer. We've got actually a couple full service caterers. We've got a taco shop. We've got somebody who does baking for Fez and other restaurants. Gosh, a whole bunch of different things. We got a guy who makes these really fantastic handmade dumplings that are all gluten-free and vegan, which is a remarkable thing.
Nice.
And they actually eat and taste and feel like, like gyoza dumplings. So they're great.
It would be ridiculous for us to expect you. I'm like, Gabe, name every one of them in alphabetical order. You deal with so many like up and coming and small businesses.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we've got 75 across the 4 kitchens at the moment. We are looking to open our 5th kitchen at the start of next year in Glendale.
Okay, nice.
67th Ave in Glendale.
Is that the furthest west then you guys have?
It will be, for sure. And that one is built after the first one that you were in, which is the one in Mesa. It's built in an affordable housing development, and it's meant to not only be a springboard for businesses to grow and for us to be able to incubate them there, but also to be an anchor and a way to help folks with things like food insecurity and cooking classes and community programming.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. I love everything that Local First does. So I guess if someone hasn't listened to the other 14 episodes you've been on,
right. Yeah, sure.
What is Local First?
Sure. So Local First is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we believe or we strive for economic development, right? We think that economic development happens best when entrepreneurs, like the ones that work in this kitchen and the others, do entrepreneurial things. So to that end, we have programming that helps all sorts of people start and grow and scale all sorts of businesses.
So not just food, like you guys.
That's right. Yeah. So it could be a plumbing supply store. It could be housekeepers. It could be somebody who owns a law firm.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
And everything that run the gamut between that. Because of my particular background, when I started working for Local First almost 6 years ago, I worked in hotels and restaurants and country clubs and culinary schools. And I came to that first kitchen in Mesa, and we realized that more people would start and grow food businesses if they had access to affordable kitchen space. And so we leveraged that kitchen to be able to help just short of 30 business owners grow their operation. What I realized in short order, and I always laugh when I get to this part of the story, is I learned way more from screwing things up or I went into this like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And then I got about 8 or 9 months in and I realized that I'd filled the kitchen up, but there was no vehicle for them to ever move on. Like we allow folks to use our kitchens at well below market rate, which removes a barrier so they can grow their business.
Yeah.
But once I had it full, I realized, why would they? There's no incentive to leave.
Sure.
And so we had to reverse engineer an incubation program whereby we help them scale and grow. And the goal now, right, is to get to a point at the end of 2 years, which is how long we let a business use one of our kitchens, where they get to the end and they're like, man, this is great, but we're bursting at the seams here.
Yeah.
And we need something bigger, better, different. And that's where the economic development happens, right? Like, yes, during the 2 years, they are providing for themselves and their families, and they're keeping local dollars in Arizona and doing the right things and growing their thing and helping other businesses grow their thing. But the ultimate goal is for them to go on and have that kind of woven into the fabric of their business. And then they go out into the world, to leave the nest, so to speak, and go out and do better.
Otherwise, you got a full nest of mature birds.
That's right. You got a bunch of 50-year-old birds just hanging out.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because you hit a certain, and I've noticed this really in any kind of industry that I've worked in, you do hit a certain point where people are like, they're comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. So you ever deal with that where people are like, we kind of dig this, like this is nice where we're at, like they don't want to move for
sure. And we'll get people as they come up. So we sit down with the business every single quarter. And what we're doing is we're creating, first we ask them, like, what's the dream? What's the end goal? And so if you're a farmer's market stand, does that mean that you want a food truck at the end of 2 years? Or if you're a food truck, do you want a restaurant at the end of 2 years? And then in 3-month increments, we're creating small goals towards that big one.
Sure.
and then we're, staying on them and helping them where we can, right? Like the example I always give is like, if you want an introduction to someone at a farmer's market, I can make the introduction, but you still have to go. Your product has to be great. You've got to have good customer service. You've got to show up every week. And like, you've got to do the work.
Sure.
I can introduce you to the farmer's market person, right?
For sure.
And get your foot in the door. And so, anyway, we will have folks that as we come up to like a year and a half, a year and 9 months, they're like, how about an extension?
Sure.
And while we certainly have empathy and understand why they would like to do that, what that does from our perspective is it keeps that spot full, and we would like for them to move on so that we can offer it to another business, right?
Yeah.
Like, we want to move as many businesses as possible through, but we also want to move them through to the point where they're successful. Like, if we were just pumping people through and at the end of 2 years, like, their business wasn't viable, that is not a success, right?
For sure.
The point is to help them grow the business so it becomes more viable. And the lower rent across 2 years, that is the cushion that they need to be able to afford market rate rent.
Yeah. And so I guess probably, is there like an acceptance process, right? Do people apply? Like, so you don't just take everybody, like they got to kind of come with a,
So we've got a wait list. They can apply through our website. They fill out the application, and every quarter we do interviews. So we will look across the 4 kitchens where we have available space, where people have scaled out. And so we'll have 3, 4, 5 spots in one kitchen and 2 in another, and so on. And we will then say, okay, these are the spots we have to fill. Here's our wait list. We comb through all of those applications. We pick the ones that we think are the best fit, the most qualified. We will interview them. And then myself and my team, there's 5 of us total. We make the decision about which ones are best suited for each kitchen. Not only are we looking at proximity to their home, which plays some part of it, but also, if I have 15 bakers in this little kitchen, like, it's a strain on resources.
Sure.
Like the mixer, the ovens, like that's the sheet trays, those are always scooped up.
Yeah.
And so if we've got 3 bakers in here, we certainly don't need another one.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's part of our air traffic control calculations.
Yeah. See, so you're familiar with this headset.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. I've actually got those orange flashlights. When this is over, we're going to back out of frame.
Come on. No more bakers.
That's
back
right.
up.
That's
back up. I like that because it's like I coached a little bit for I don't know. Before I moved here from Ohio, I coached for a year, like football. I was like an assistant coach in middle school. And then
Did I know that you were from Ohio?
I feel like we've talked about it.
Where in Ohio?
Well, actually, I always say Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
But
we have talked about this.
Yeah, but I'm from the town where the train blew up. Remember the chemical train? East Palestine. That's
Palestine.
my hometown.
Yeah.
The mayor that you see all the time.
Yes.
I played football with him. Trent Conway.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got out of there like when I was about 27. But so coaching, I coached a few times, and it just wasn't. People always told me like, "Oh, you'd be a great coach," and I was not. I wasn't a good coach because I had a hard time coaching the kids who just weren't really into it. Like I was like, if there's a kid that was like, "Hey, I want to learn how technique," and I'm like, I'm your guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Otherwise, so to me, it's kind of like, that seems like that's the process, is like, hey, look, we'll help you. We'll introduce you to people. We'll help you learn these processes, but you got to be committed to it. Right.
Yeah. And so for all the years that I spent in culinary schools, the thing that I taught people was the technique of it, right? Like, if you want to know how to dice an onion or butcher a chicken or make, beef stock, I can show you.
Yeah.
And coming into this role and doing what I do now, like, they don't need my assistance in that, which is sometimes a blow to my fragile ego. Like, they know their product, right? Like, if they make salsa or tortillas or it doesn't matter what, like, they know their thing.
Sure.
And they're coming to us with a product that is, no pun intended, like, well baked.
Yeah.
And so where they do need help often is in, like, what are the structural pieces of the business that help it succeed. So we will help them with things like a profit and loss statement or an operating statement, or one of our goals this quarter is to be in 3 farmers markets instead of 2. And we say, okay, well, what does that really mean for the business? And it's, we need to hire somebody. Okay, what does it mean to hire somebody?
Yeah.
What's the difference between a W-2 employee and a 1099 employee? And does it make sense? Does it make sense to have a W-2 employee given the way your business is? And anyway, things like that. That's the help and the skill and the education that we're providing now on a individual one-on-one basis. I am super, super fortunate that the 4 people that work on my team are way smarter than me.
That makes you a good leader.
Well,
then,
right, yeah, I just hired a bunch of smart people. But the scope and breadth of things that they have done in the restaurant industry is I've never worked with a group of people that are as skilled as them. Jose, who you met, he has owned his own food truck and vegan taco shop, but has also like owned a tax office and like just done everything that there is to do, right? And we have a woman who owned her own bakery, and folks that have worked in hotels, and people that have done food and digital marketing, for Aaron Chamberlain, and like all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And to bring that scope and breadth of knowledge to the entrepreneurs is just really great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that diverse, right? It's that you bring in every aspect, because, people come into it sometimes like, oh man, I make the best food. Like my food is like, everybody tells me how great my food is. Okay. That's much of that.
If you want to own a food truck, like that's great. But like, how do you market that?
For sure. Yeah. How do
as one example.
Yeah. Yeah. One of dozens, if not hundreds of things that you have to deal with.
Correct.
So since COVID, so our first episode with you was during COVID. It was a Zoom one. It was we were pioneers, right? Zoom before Zoom, but but so I'm sure you've seen a huge change in this whole, like, of what you guys do specifically
in the industry broadly since COVID.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say the industry itself as far as like as a whole, as like restaurants and hospitality and stuff, but just with what you guys do, like the people that are coming in, like, was there an influx of people wanting to do more things?
Yeah. So I was actually talking about this. I was with some friends yesterday. Particularly like during the like at the height of the pandemic, everybody who wanted to be in one of these kitchens wanted to do meal prep, as an example.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was because people were scared to leave their houses and restaurants weren't open and like nobody knew what was what, but they sure as hell didn't want to cook.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to pay someone to do it. And so we had a lot of businesses that started meal prep companies and wound up in one of our kitchens. And on the other side of that, there are still certainly viable meal prep companies, and there's still people who are, for one reason or another, because of their life circumstance, like, are willing to pay for that. It is not as prominent as it was then.
For like a year.
Right.
Basically. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those people are like, well, what do I do now? And like, do you do, corporate catering? Because it's similar, right? Like box lunches are similar to meal prep, right? Yeah. And so we've had to help people that are in situations like that make operational and structural changes to their business. And a comment on the industry broadly is, I think that the restaurant industry, the food industry, is being asked to do more than it ever has. So during the COVID pandemic, everybody was pivoting, which is a word that like still gives me PTSD just to hear, like, oh, sure. Right?
Yeah.
But like everybody had to have online ordering and online delivery and all of these things. And that became the norm.
Yeah.
On the other side of this, dining rooms are full again, mercifully, right? As somebody like, I won't say that.
Yeah.
I really like going out to eat.
I do too.
Right?
I'm a huge fan.
Ordering food to my house is not the same.
No.
It's also not as good, in my opinion.
No, not even close.
Right.
Yeah.
So like the process of going out, like, it's a whole thing. And then that to me is entertainment.
Yeah.
But restaurants are still being asked to do both, right? Like, you've still got to figure out how to broker things like DoorDash and Uber Eats and all of that. And have everything absolutely accessible at all times via a cell phone for your diners. But you also then have to worry about, now you have to make a dining experience again.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And you got to be good at both things. You got to walk and chew gum or whatever the phrase is.
Yeah, that's a challenge, because I think that at the beginning people were just kind of like, that's not what we're set up to do.
Right.
Then it's like, well, this is what we have to do. So,
Right.
and now that you couldn't just like, okay, pandemic's over, we're taking this away. And
Right.
people are like,
Because
what the
people
hell?
became used to it. Yeah. And that's how you wind up with like high end restaurants. Like I remember, I mean, I'm thinking like May, June of 2020. My wife and I made a decision that we would once a week support a business that like we missed and we couldn't go to. And I remember Restaurant Progress, which I think is it's one of my favorite restaurants in the Valley. They were doing like fried chicken dinners.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like going and eating, 5 courses at Restaurant Progress now and thinking about how like I also went and picked up a bag full of fried chicken.
Yeah.
Like it's really like it doesn't, but that's what they had to do.
For sure.
And I make good fried chicken, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I have not been there. I've heard great things about it though. Yeah.
Oh, that's the restaurant that we go to, like, anniversary or, celebration.
special-
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
special occasion place, but it's really great. They
Nice.
do a really nice job, and their service in front of the house is unbelievable.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the interesting aspect of the people had to do things that they didn't do before. And, one of the things that, and it's close to where I live, Angie's Lobster, and now they have Angie's Prime.
Mm-hmm.
I saw them, what they did, and I'm like, wow, that's like what they were able to do as far as kind of streamlining things, minimizing costs,
Mhm.
minimizing personnel. I'm like, this is kind of the future. Like,
Yes. And one of the things, so for all the businesses that we have in our kitchens, we require them to go through, it's called Good Food Boot Camp. It's a 6-week course, and it begins to lay the foundation for the things that I mentioned, like marketing and profit and loss and those sort of building blocks that we help businesses with. But we do a section about profitable menu design. And one of the points that I make, I try to impart to those businesses is, instead of trying to be all things to all people, like focus on like what you're most passionate about. Number one, what you're best at and what you can successfully execute on over and over and over. If you look at restaurants, particularly in the mobile space, but also I think in the brick and mortar space, on the other side of the pandemic, menus have shrunk and people are focusing on things that bring in a crowd, that have good profit margins, and that they can continue to hone as a craft, right? So like Snapback Pizzeria, right?
Yeah.
Is really fantastic.
Yeah.
They make really, really great high quality pizza, right? But they're probably not going to have like lobster with hollandaise,
Yeah,
because that wouldn't make sense. And
Yeah.
so for a restaurant like that to continue to refine and get better at what they do, it raises, was it rising tide raises all ships? Like
Yeah.
everybody needs to rise to the occasion. And so pizza in the Valley, I think, is an example of something that has gotten markedly better in the past, 2-3 years. Not just because of them, but like
Sure.
because people are caring about the craft and the quality of what they're eating.
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, coming from the beer industry too, there were like beer festivals, right? People love beer festivals, but the pandemic, with people not being able to do those types of things, they kind of were able to sit back and be like, do I need to do all these? Like, do I
Right.
need to do all
Yeah.
this stuff? And the restaurant's same, like, do I need to have all this stuff on my menu? Can we not specialize in a few good things and nail it?
Mhm.
And I mean, that's something we've learned with our business is like, how do you systemize it? How do you make it
Yeah.
so that no matter who is in that role, that's going to be able to execute, right?
Mhm.
We have Rachel Benkowski as our sales marketing. She's just awesome. Like,
Mhm.
and she's our first person we were able to bring on a full-time capacity to help, and she's doing great. But not to toot my own horn, but it was a lot of the systems that I was able to put together, like
Mhm.
through me doing it,
Right.
that she was able to kind of take over that stuff. But it took some work. Once I handed it to her, she was kind of like, okay, this kind of makes sense. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I should probably systemize this a little bit more, right? Because it was a good system for me.
Makes
And-
sense to me.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. But I was, and she always tells me, she's like, hey, you're way more organized than you give yourself credit for. So there wasn't a huge learning curve for it or whatever adjustment for it. But I did have to then start thinking, okay, well, Rachel does a really good job of, she's just a go-getter. She'll figure stuff out. I'm like, hey, this, and this. She's like, hey, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. I'm like, okay, well, how do we now systemize that so that if we bring somebody on who might not have that confidence or might not have the skills that she has, like, what do we do? We're like, here it is. Here's the system.
Yes.
A cook comes into a kitchen. You're like, how do I do this? You don't have to wait for the chef who's super busy to be like, all right, dude, here real quick. I got 5 minutes. I'll show you. No, here it is. Here's
And part of with the businesses that we work with, we've created a whole bunch of templates, right? Like we have a hiring plan template.
Yeah.
And so if somebody says, I'm trying to hire somebody, say, this is it. Like, here it is. This is a place to start. It is not customized to your business for sure. And that, again, is completely because we Local First hired the right people to be in those roles that has that skill set. And so that is a leg up for the businesses that we work with, because they don't have to, from the ground up, build that. They're like, oh, I can start here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives you an example.
And so, and the joke I make all the time is like, people wind up in, my inbox or filling out the applications for the kitchen because they want an inexpensive kitchen. Here's the joke I make. Come for the cheap kitchen, stay for the incubation, right?
That needs to be a shirt, man.
Right. And so like they show up because we're the cheapest kitchen in the Valley by a long shot.
Yeah.
But what I think is the real value of the program is the skills and the tools that they get to be able to grow their business.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, and we'll take a break here in a second, but that's really interesting because, I guess it's just our nature, but what we have to do is we have to minimize all of the fires that we're dealing with, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody comes, they've got a product, they're in their mind, they're like, all right, I got this. I got this figured out, in the back of their mind, they're like, I don't know shit, but they're like, I got this, because you have to minimize all of those fires. You're like, all right, I just need a cheap kitchen. Right. But then when they come to you guys, then it starts to, maybe they let their guard down a little bit. Okay. Yeah. I don't I know how to hire somebody. Okay. What's your process? Right. Just look at them in the eye and, okay, well, here's actually a proven process that somebody else can do. So that's cool. Because you've got that, it's that foot in the door, there you're like, hey, yes, we have this, the inexpensive kitchen,
right?
But stay for the incubation.
That's right.
That's a hashtag too.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break.
A real quick reminder, head over to atasteofaz.com and subscribe to our email newsletter. Also, subscribe to A Taste of AZ magazine and get it shipped right to your door. Now let's get back into today's episode.
Here we are, back live.
Hello.
So another thing that you guys do, which is coming up here pretty soon, is the Good Food Expo.
Yeah.
So you've been on, now that I think about it, you've been on the podcast probably even more times because of you. Dude, you're really weaseling your way into this thing. But no, I love the Good Food Expo.
I'm waiting to get one of those shirts.
Oh, well, I'll get you one. What size are you? You want to say on the mic?
I would be a large. Sure.
All right, okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Cool.
He sucks it in. I'm a large.
With an X in front of it. 2 X's. No, we'll get you one. I'll get you one for sure. But so the Good Food Expo, last couple of years, we've put up a table, but given out magazines, done a live podcast. Right. This one is actually in Tucson, though.
It sure is. Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Well, so are we. So the Good Food Forum and Expo is really a chance for us to merge the food work that Local First does. So this is nerdy. Just bear with me a minute, right? I have a master's degree in sustainable food systems. So here it is.
Yeah, I love it.
So let me trot out my education, my well-paid for education. So the food system in Arizona is really great at, we're certainly good at eating. We're certainly good at creating and restaurants and chefs and food trucks, that sort of thing. We're also, as a person from the Midwest, also from Ohio, right? Shockingly, we're really great. Shockingly to me anyway, we're really great at growing stuff, right? Fruits, vegetables.
Yep. Lettuce.
Lettuce, fantastic beef,
vegetable,
right?
I guess,
Right. Yeah. So we're really great at that. The hard part is getting all the things that we grow and produce in Arizona into the hands of those who turn it into usable, eatable things. So the Good Food Forum and Expo is our attempt to fuse those two things and bring the eaters and the producers, right? The creators and the producers to the same room,
Okay.
right? So as an example, we might have Chef Devin from Zio Pepe in Tucson walking around as someone who buys a lot of food, and he is in the same room as someone who is growing and raising grass-fed Arizona beef,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that is a happy marriage.
Yep.
Those two folks are introduced to one another, and the idea is that business-to-business transactions result, realizing that a farm or a ranch is a small business the same as his restaurant is a small business.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the commerce portion of it, and that's the expo, and that's where you guys will be doing your podcast, and we're grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. And the other half of it is the forum, which is a place for food systems knowledge and best practices from around the state. So we will have farmers and ranchers and food systems experts and professors and people with big brains who are actively working on making the food system better, more sustainable. We have an entire track of called Indigenous Foodways, which looks at the way the indigenous people in Arizona have been growing and cultivating and sustaining food and life for thousands of years, and why that works, and how we can put that into broader use across the scope and breadth of agriculture in the state, which I'm super thrilled about.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the idea of the event. Specifically, we're doing it in Tucson as we are doing a tremendous amount of work. Local First is doing a tremendous amount of work in Southern Arizona. My colleague, Patty Emmert, runs our Resilient Food Systems team. And they are looking at all sorts of things from water consumption and working with U of A to do a grant for climate smart crops, looking at crops that use less water but can still sustain the growing population of the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
And getting farmers to not only transition their crops from water thirsty ones to more responsible, less water intensive crops. Which is one piece of it, but then there also has to be a market, right? So if you go to a farmer and you say, hey, switch from this to this, right? And then they grow it and there's no place to sell it on the other side of it, like that's a failure. And not only is that farm likely or more likely to not make it, but then if they do, they're just going to go back to the thing that was sucking the water down, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So they're looking at things like that. So that particular program, like I said, is giving farmers the technical assistance to transition crops to ones that are desert adapted. And then also looking at, okay, once you harvest this, whatever this is, where does it go? Who sells it? Who buys it? How do we put it into the food system to make the state more sustainable?
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, I think of Sinagua Malt.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they got farmers to, I think it was Hauser Farms,
Mhm.
to go from alfalfa to barley.
Yep.
But then the key point of it was Arizona Wilderness was then going to use that barley to make their
That's right.
beer.
That is a circular economy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It is. And now they're to the point where, they're, a couple of years ago, I think Arizona Wilderness was like, hey, now we're using all of our barley is Sinagua Malt. And then I talked to, is it Steve and Chip from Sinagua Malt? And they're like, now we're to the point where we're growing. So we're going to be able to soon be able to provide now barley and grain to more,
Right.
because Wilderness was utilizing
Yeah.
what all they could produce.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's great because it's like technology meets history,
Yeah.
right? Because we're utilizing technology in so many different ways. Like I said, like Angie's, like where their POS system, you don't have to go and talk to somebody. You don't have to have somebody taking your order. You just hit the things. And, so there's innovation in that aspect of using technology. But then there's also like, hey, there's stuff that's been working here for a long time. Like
Right.
indigenous
And-
people
yes.
figured things out.
Yep. And so paying homage to what the state historically has done well and continues to do well, and elevating those stories like the Sinagua malt, right? So Hauser and Hauser, we did a film series during the pandemic when we couldn't do the Good Food Forum and Expo. We said, well, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so we did this film series that's now housed on our goodfoodfinderaz.com website.
Nice go to that website. Yeah, that was dude. That was
Can we have that
seamless.
scroll across the bottom of the screen,
Yeah.
flashing red lights? Anyway, but we tell that exact story, right? Where
Yeah.
you're talking about using that crop and the Verde River and all the things that are tied up in that as a way of creating something that not only we're good at, but that there is a market for. And there we talked about kind of limiting your focus to focus on what you're best at. They create some of the best beer in the state by doing what Arizona has been doing and is what we're good at, and then ultimately is good for the state and the economy and the environment.
Yeah,
Which is so cool.
for sure. Yeah, and I love brands and you know, because it's hard to do. That is hard to do sometimes, right? Because especially if you have systems and process and things that you've used forever, or what, you know, however long you've used it with your restaurant or whatever it is, to switch that up.
Yeah.
But it's. Well, here's what I was gonna say too. You saw me, I was lost in thought. I'm like, what? I get distracted too. There's like people with hats driving by.
All right, yeah.
And not just any old hat.
Bright
Those are-
lights and cars. And,
yeah, like whoa. Well, I think it's great that then it is in Tucson this year because I mean it's city of gastronomy,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
because of its. When I first heard that, I'm like, what is that exactly? And then you realize that it's because of the history of agriculture in Tucson and the surrounding area, and you realize how. I mean, it's one of two in this country, right? That's awesome.
yeah.
So I love that it's going to be in Tucson this year. So if somebody is listening to this, what would they expect to, like, who would this be good for?
Sure.
To go check out.
So, gosh, the front half of the day, the forum would be good for anybody who is interested. If any of the things that we've been talking about for the past 5 minutes, kind of like, oh, I wonder what that's about.
Yeah.
Food systems knowledge, like that's what it's for. And there's all sorts of things, whether it be responsibly running a restaurant to things like the water issue, right? And agriculture and farming to indigenous foodways that we've been talking about. So if you want more knowledge about that, that would be one piece of the puzzle. If you are someone who buys food on a large scale, so a hotel, a restaurant, a school, I'm working on a couple partnerships with a couple vocational JTED schools to bring their culinary students in to be able to see all of the amazing products that Arizona has. So those are the folks that would wind up being in the expo, which, for lack of a better term, is a food show.
Sure.
They're all local vendors, producers, artisans.
And you get to taste their stuff.
That is 100% true. And so then lastly, right, anybody who is simply interested in local food is more than welcome to attend. We specifically are creating an event to build those business connections and create economic development. But folks who want to know more about local food, please come.
Yeah.
Please.
We had, I can't remember. I don't think it was Oatman. Maybe it was Oatman. There was a meat. I don't know if it was just beef or was all meat.
Harquist Hollow Farms.
Right next to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott and Christy are the two nicest human beings on the planet, number one.
Yeah.
They also happen to have the best beef in Arizona.
Stake it, putting your flag in that one.
I'm just saying.
Man, you're going to ruffle some feathers on that now.
That's real good.
It is what it is, man.
It's real good.
Yeah. Well, so they were busy. Like they were always talking to people. And I thought it was cool. I saw a handful of chefs that, you know, a couple that have been on the podcast before. So we recognized each other. But I saw them talking with them. And so it makes sense. It's like, you know, these chefs are there trying to find like, what is the best, like, how can we up our game a little bit or, you know?
So it does a couple of things from a chef's perspective, right? If I put on my chef hat, right, which has been a few years since I've done that, but it creates some competitive advantage, right? In that they have a product that a certain segment of the population is seeking, right? So people who are interested in local, you know, free range, organic, grass fed, antibiotic, hormone free, that thing, right? So you are appealing to that subset of folks. So it gives you the ability to do a couple of things as a business owner, a chef and business owner. It gives you the ability to charge a premium price, right? But also it can give you the ability, because you're cutting out the middleman, you're going directly to that rancher, maybe you can charge a lower price and still and have a better quality product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's one piece. And that's the business calculation and the price at the end and what you can justify versus what you have to have in order to make profit and revenue. Right. That's a business calculation. But also, if, you know, the chef is talking to Scott and Christy, that's building a community of people who are supporting one another.
Yeah.
Right. And I have said economic development probably 400 times in the last half hour, right?
I'm going to make just the thing of all just you saying that.
Right. That's the point.
Yeah.
The point of it is for those two businesses to work together. And when the chef spends their food buying dollars, which they're going to spend anyway to keep their restaurant open and to have the product that they need to serve their guests, when they spend it on a local level, it helps out. Scott and Christy is a family run ranch, right? That are supporting other families, right, through their employees and the people that are processing their beef and selling it at farmers markets and running it to restaurants and all those things, right? But it also happens to support them and their children.
Yeah.
Right. That's a beautiful story to tell, but it also does the right things for the environment for Arizona, right? It's less miles traveled between their ranch and the restaurant. And there's so many other incredible benefits that come simply by nurturing that relationship. And as somebody who likes to eat in restaurants, like, it's a better hamburger.
Yeah. 100%.
Like far and away.
Yep. Yeah. We got this. It wasn't local, but it was, I think Sprouts had, I mean, it was local. Sprouts
is a locally based company.
Yeah.
You can feel good about shopping at Sprouts.
Well, but the beef itself, I can't remember what it was, but my wife had found it. She follows a bunch of like influencers and health stuff. And it was this beef that was like, it was on sale at Sprouts for like $12 a pound, usually like 18.
On sale for $12.
Yeah. I'm like, oh man. And she's like, well, let's just try it out.
Yeah.
So we had burgers with it yesterday. Incredible.
Yeah.
The best burger I've ever made at home.
Wow.
Like, that beef was like incredible.
This guy's eating a lot of burgers.
I have. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I was just grateful that we weren't eating turkey burgers, because that's usually what she goes for. But it's profoundly better. And so like you said, there's so much, there's the economic development aspect of it. There's, supporting all these things. But at the end of the day, too, that chef is able to make this burger and provide this burger that people are going to be like, whoa,
yeah,
like, what is this?
Right.
And then they start asking questions,
Yes.
like tell the server, that was the best burger I've ever had. They're like, oh yeah, that's from, that was raised here in Arizona.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just,
and they can do things like, not many chefs want to make the burger bun, right, and grind the beef and make the patty and the sauce and the pickles.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of things going to one hamburger.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe they support Nice Buns Bakery, right? And they buy hamburger buns from them or whomever.
Yeah.
Right. But you then, again, you're creating a more robust localized economy that isn't reliant on market fluctuations when the lettuce that we grow here goes to the Central Coast of California to get processed, and then we buy it back.
Yeah.
Right. Which is bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which happens.
For sure.
And so if you can go directly to the farmer and buy that lettuce from them, you're saving money, number one. But two, you get all of those other benefits, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So when is the Good Food Expo?
It is August 27th.
August 27th.
Okay. It is from 9 a.m. to 4. The forum runs in the first half of the day, and the expo specifically is from 1 to 4.
Okay.
We're going to have about 100 local vendors. Our vendor sheet keeps ticking up.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, which is a good problem. That's a good problem to have.
On it? Yeah.
There's a cap, for the fire marshal.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Eventually, they're like, so. But anyway, we will be under the cap, I think, but over our expectation, which is cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll have about 100 local vendors, and then we'll have hundreds of people walking around, chefs and restaurateurs, regular folks, and jokers like you.
I was like, where do I fall
If
into
you
that
see
category?
anybody, tall dude with the microphone, be like, oh, let's go to the next aisle.
Jeez. Don't look. Yeah. Shoot, he saw me. So, and where can people find, like, what's the website for all this
so
stuff?
it's goodfoodfinderaz.com. Right on the homepage, you'll find more information, or click through to buy tickets are the two buttons. You can also look at Local First Arizona. On our website, there is a link through as well. If you can't remember, Good Food Finder AZ, because it's a mouthful, Local First Arizona.
Beautiful, man. And just as just a consumer, right? You know, because I'd say one thing I'm really grateful about with what we do is we have, you know, the general consumer, the foodies of the world who just want to find great places. But in addition to that, we have the industry side of it that really supports us and likes us,
Sure.
right? And that's kind of what Good Food Expo is. But for the regular folk out there, what can they benefit from, like going and checking out the Local First website
Sure.
and stuff like that?
So Good Food Finder is a wealth of knowledge. All the things that I've been talking about, the food system stuff, it is encyclopedic in its scope and breadth, and the issues that it covers as far as the food system in Arizona. So if anything that I've said, like, oh, I wonder what that's about, go there, please.
Prove it,
because
Gabe,
people
prove
that are
it.
smart, people that are smarter than me, right, have put that website together, and it really is. It's a love letter to the state of Arizona and the things that we grow and make and produce. So that's really cool. Local First Arizona is it is the place to go if you care about and want to support small businesses, if you own a small business in the state of Arizona. It's an advocacy group for those small businesses. And it's just an unbelievable wealth of knowledge and resource.
I love it. I just like to browse it sometimes and be like, and to check out all the local businesses, like the things that are like, oh man, like I've been looking for a local candy maker or something,
Right.
you know, like stuff like that. It's
Right.
just, it's really cool. So yeah, nice work, man.
Thank
You
you.
always do well. I knew your 10th episode would be your best one.
Yeah, that's right.
No, man, you're always a great guest. We appreciate the support that you and Local First give us. So thank you for that.
Happy to do it. Thanks for all you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you August 27th.
Indeed.